My name is Osman Salahuddin. I am the 2017-2018 ASUW President. The first thing that I really want to do is put out the word of ASUW out there. ASUW as an organization represents every single student on campus, from the undergraduates to the graduate students. That's almost 45,000 plus students. And so what we really want to do here as an association is take our programming, events, sort of structure that we have laid out in the ASUW and give it to the students who need it the most, which are all of the students who are represented in the organizations, but really the students who can use all of these programs that we have to offer. So some of these examples include the entities that are the diversity entities. So Middle Eastern Student Commission is a new one that started last year, Black Student Commission, Pacific Islander Student Commission. These are just a few of the examples of organizations that students can become a part of and really find their community at the University of Washington. The programs that we have aren't really limited to sort of ethnic-based communities. They're also expanded to, for example, interests. So Rainy Dog Radio or Arts and Entertainment at the University of Washington, ASUW, are programs that students can get involved with. And they don't really have to have a background in, say, radio or the entertainment field. If they're interested, they can help volunteer, they can be employees of the association. And so what we really want to do is expand our reach. Right now, as seen with the elections last year, a lot of engagement isn't there with the association. And so we're really trying to push myself along with the rest of the board of directors, as well as the communications director, what the vision of ASUW will be next year, and really take that to the next level and reach out to the entire student body, freshmen through seniors, as well as graduate students, and say, this is what we have to offer through all of our programs, events, and opportunities, and we really want to work with you as students and bring you in. So the Associated Students of the University of Washington is essentially the governing body of the school. We have the board of directors who are the governing directors, and then the 20 plus entities that make up the association with the various different programs. As for the elections process, I know that last year we were the only ticket that ran. The year before there were, I think, 4 full tickets and then 1 half ticket that ran. So a lot of, there's basically been a roller coaster of engagement in election process. And so what we're really trying to do is go back to finding out why students want to get involved. There are so many opportunities and so many different positions that students could get interested in, and maybe the word hasn't been brought out properly. So I know the Director of Internal Policy, Bo Goodrich, will be working with the Elections Administration Committee really closely next year and going through each of our processes in the ASUW bylaws and seeing where students really want to fix that engagement process, whether it be like reaching out more on social media versus handing out paper pamphlets, or really just tabling more, finding out where students find that engagement and targeting those areas so that students really know what ASUW is before they want to get involved. Looking at our different ways that we can go about reaching out to students, I think the main thing is communication and face-to-face communication. So I really want to build relationships not only with myself but through the rest of the association as well. I think we have almost 70 employees, so each of these is sort of a conduit for getting the word out of what the association actually does. So if they can talk to one student, who can talk to one student, I think that really pushes what the association is all about. What we're really trying to do is, to the communities that we liaison to, really echo different programs and events that we have, but also invite them in to what we're doing, invite them to different events and programs rather than just saying, hey, this is what we have and that's it. We want to encourage a space where we're creating like a harmony on both sides rather than just a one-way street where we're just pushing out our agenda and saying that's it. I guess in terms of social media, the ASUW Facebook page, I know there's 40,000 students like I mentioned, and the Facebook page has maybe 5,000. I'm not positive on those numbers, but it's not great.
Huge disparity.
And so yeah, there's a huge disparity, especially since the page has been open for a while and students have graduated. I know that a lot more students can get involved with that, and that could be a great way for especially outreach on social media, is harnessing more of that growth on the Facebook page. I guess tabling has also been effective, especially if we do it right. I know that a lot of students just walk past tables,
Yeah.
but if we're incentivizing students by sort of encouraging them with what events we have and sort of tailoring them to what student demographics might be involved. So, like, for example, the Ethnic Cultural Center is a great spot to table, but I don't know how often the ASUW does that, especially since we have a lot of diversity commissions where students could get involved. I think that's a place where we could have more growth in tabling, say. The first step to go about addressing the inaccessible and unaffordable housing at the University of Washington and the surrounding areas in the U District would be collaborating with local legislators. So having that conversation with, for example, I just sent an email to Rob Johnson, who's a council member in the U District, and so having those conversations and starting the topics and opening up what students want, and then bringing that back to the University of Washington and really seeing where our areas of need are. And I know that inaccessible housing is something that has been affecting so many students over the years, not just recently, but it's been a long time coming. And so I think going back and taking these student voices and student stories that we've been collecting, some of them focusing on this issue, and taking them to, for example, Rob Johnson or other council members, and saying this is sort of what our demand is. We want to see improvement, and not stopping with just the conversation, but hashing out a concrete plan to see what can be done rather than what should be done. As ASUW president, I really want to echo the voice of the student body. Mental health awareness and mental health resources, sexual assault and relationship violence advocacy, these are things that students need on campus, and if our resources are lacking in those areas, I really want to address those with administration before like going around and saying, hey, this is sort of what students might want. I want them to know that this is what we need on campus, and these are conversations that don't need to be brushed over. They're direct conversations. If we need more staff at the counseling center, that's exactly what I seek to want the student opinion to sort of voice. If we need more, I guess resources is a vague term, but more money allocated towards the counseling center, for example, then that's something that I will fight and push the administration to sort of advocate for the student body to implement. Last year I was the director of community relations in the ASUW, and so I had a lot of conversations with students in the Greek community, in the residential community, commuter students who felt, and student athletics, who felt that there were areas in the university, I guess, that could improve with these counseling center and mental health resources areas, and really those conversations brought up this bigger idea of there might be resources lacking, because I've heard students who have said that they've waited far too long to see someone at, for example, Hall Health or at the counseling center, or that they don't relate to anyone at the counseling center, so how can they share their stories? I think that's a major problem, and with the diverse student body that we have at the University of Washington, these are issues that need to be resolved. I actually haven't gotten a chance to speak with anyone in these organizations yet, but I guess the year, there's still 2 months until the school year starts.
No, definitely.
I'm doing a lot of work over the summer as well, so getting ready to address these issues.
Cool.
Supporting marginalized students, I guess the word support can seem very broad, but it can have a lot of specific connotations. Looking at support in the sense of resources, so the ASUW has its diversity commissions, and looking at these commissions, you can see that we have a lot of resources in terms of staff. So we have employees who can talk to students who might need a community to go to. If they identify as a Middle Eastern student, they can go to the new Middle Eastern Student Commission Director, Mena. If they identify with any of the other student commissions, they can go and talk to them and have that staff and employee, I guess, resource. They also have events and programming that they can integrate themselves to be a part of as students at the University of Washington. So I guess that's one part of support that we offer at the ASUW, but I want to take that support that we're offering here and reach that out to the community, because there are students who might not feel comfortable coming to the ASUW, or who might not even know about what we have to offer. And so the word support I really want to use as something where we're going out to all of the different communities. There's over 1,000 RSOs of students congregate but might not know about what ASUW has to offer, and really say, this is who we are, this is what we're planning on doing, and we have the ability to talk to administrators, the ability to talk to legislators and create visible change on campus. And we would love to hear your opinions, your perspectives, your student stories, and really say, take them back to the administrators and the legislators and the staff at the University of Washington, and help support these students, because they might not have any other avenues to gain this actual change that we can create here. The 2017 to 2021 Diversity Blueprint is something that tackles these issues of raising the awareness on what students might want and need on campus. So this includes things such as working with faculty and improving the diversity training there, because if we're not having a diverse perspective with the people who are teaching the students who are attending this university, then it might be difficult for students to relate or even feel comfortable. I mean, speaking up in class, going to these professors and faculty and staff after class, during office hours, for example, or just getting comfortable in this environment. So one stipulation to keep in mind when allocating funding towards, for example, commuter students or transfer students or international students, for that example, would be that not all students are a part of these communities. And so taking into account that this money might not be allocated towards, for example, the larger university is something that needs to be aware. But I think that these student groups that are non-traditional, for example, student athletes, student veterans, commuter students, international students, transfer students, are groups that have such an important role on this campus, as do any other group. And making sure that they have the resources and the projects and programming available for them to succeed on campus, I think is really necessary. I'm a commuter student myself, and so I've really, the last 3 years, I've gone through this university and seen that there's not a lot of support offered for commuter students. For example, the Greek community has IFC and Panhellenic, the residential community has RCSA, and these are organizations that are built to support students in those communities. The commuter students have the Commuter and Transfer Commons, which as a location, it's really, really beneficial. Students can congregate there, but beyond that, there's no programming for commuter students. There's not a lot of opportunities for us to voice our opinions and concerns on things that we might see as legislative action. And so I really want sort of funding and resources to go towards allocating projects and I guess programs for these non-traditional groups, so that they're able to grow and function within these same boundaries as other traditional students at University of Washington are going through. As a commuter student, I would really love to see more, I guess, multiple things, more accessible bus routes. I know that certain times I'm waiting for a bus and it says it's coming in 2 minutes and it's already gone 5 minutes ago. And so I know One Bus Away is a great app which I use, but really seeing which bus routes students use and doing a bus route audit maybe. I know I've spoken with the Office of Government Relations here at the ASUW, and we've talked about different ways to incorporate commuter student perspectives on how they might leave at 5 o'clock p.m. And so seeing maybe if earlier programming might be necessary, or seeing which bus routes work best. I think those are all important considerations. I would also like to see something that I advocated for last year but sort of found a little difficult to implement was a Commuter Students Association, and seeing something on that with that capacity is maybe talking about legislative items, so things that the legislation can sort of impact rather than just students doing the work. I guess maybe specifically with that bus route audit, that's not something that we can just do without any resources right now. It would require a lot of capital. It would require things such as getting in conversations with legislators and seeing what perspectives they have. And so really looking at how we can better improve commuter student life here at the University of Washington, not just at the specific student level. I haven't really thought about it in terms of the inefficiencies in the ASUW. One thing that has, so one of the inefficiencies that we will be facing this year will be the budget deficit sort of that we have encountered here at the ASUW. There was a budgeting error, so it forced us to do a lot of cuts here at the association, looking at a lot of the association going through sort of cuts in areas that we might not have wanted to do, but were necessary for the functioning of the association for next year, for this coming year and next year as well. So I think that's one thing that we have to deal with is sort of navigating this weird space where we're allocated a certain amount of money and we have to go by that allocation rather than trying to do everything that we would hope to do. We're sort of constrained, and that's an inefficiency that I see. Last year, the association really did a lot of positive work on building more cohesive atmosphere, and so I hope to take that next year and leading the association to be more cohesive unit, because I think that if all the employees work together, if all the entities work together, whether or not they're related, for example, the Pacific Islander Student Commission and the Middle Eastern Student Commission are two completely different student commissions, but they can have overlaps in terms of programmings and events. So taking that into consideration, I really want to create an atmosphere where students are comfortable working together, but also working to create positive change in the entire community. So a lot of what I want to accomplish might be allocating money towards specific projects, or it might include, for example, staff at the counseling center would be another sort of salary that would have to be paid. And so these are things that wouldn't come out necessarily of the ASUW budget. These are things that I would advocate for as ASUW president or as a representative of this association for the university administrators to look at and really say this is what the university could benefit from. And so I will be doing a lot of advocating, a lot of pushing for what students need and want, because that's my job here as ASUW president. I'm here to represent the students, and I'm here to represent their student voice. So whether that be pushing for allocation of funding, whether that be for more programs, more resources, that's what I'm here to do. So my main focus for this year would be pushing the word out of what ASUW actually is. There's so many, I guess, misconceptions that might be floating around about exactly what ASUW does, which can be sort of pushing students away from the association itself. I want to make sure that students know what our vision is and that we have a concrete vision, what we're trying to accomplish in terms of all of our entities, all of our programs, and all of our resources, because we have so many of them. I just want to make sure that students know what we're doing here at the ASUW, so that's going to be a main focus of what we're doing in this coming school year. Some key issues that I really want to focus on are sort of related to what students might want or need on campus. So whether this be advocating for a tuition freeze, advocating for the decoupling of the student and activities fees in legislation, or really looking at the state need grant, because that's something that I'm a strong proponent of. I would really advocate for fully funding the state need grant. It's something that's helped me, it's something that's helped many students on this campus and in this state, and so I really want to push for these key issues related to the budget. I know next year won't be a budget year in the ASUW, so I'll be working with the Office of Government Relations to see really what areas we can focus on, whether that be mental health resources, sexual assault and relationship violence advocacy, physical health resources. These are areas that we want to emphasize not only with local legislators but state legislators as well. So I think balancing the budget is actually a really tricky situation. Looking at where money is coming from is really important. I do think that if tuition is frozen and the state need grant allocation increases, that's a win-win for us, but it might be difficult, especially looking at where the money would be coming from. I know that advocating for the increase in the state need grant is something that I'm a strong proponent of, but also looking at if the tuition was to increase, that's something that helps increase the state need grant. So finding that tricky balance is a scenario that you always have to look at, and it's something that is never easy, especially considering how many students are impacted. But looking at what students want and need, this is where the student stories come in, is we really want to, as an association, take the student perspective of not only all of our employees, but the 45,000 students that we represent, and if they have areas that they want us to focus on, that's what we as an association will represent their opinion at the legislative level. Some other things that I will look to be focusing on next year will be talking to legislators and sort of administrators about things such as inaccessible, unaffordable housing, unaffordable transportation options, but also more accessible transportation options, as well as looking at these resources. So in the mental health and sexual assault relationship capacity, we have programs that might need sort of improvement. And so looking at these areas are of concern, not only to me as the ASUW president, but to the rest of the association as well. So allocating our resources and sort of what we're trying to do and our mission, we'll be really trying to push how we can support student mental health, how we can support students when they might need support in terms of finding a community on campus, finding places where they might not necessarily have the advocacy portion, and then coming into the Office of Government Relations, for example, and pushing forward legislation that could go to the state, that could go to the federal level even. We have that ability at the ASUW, so emphasizing that is really important to us. I'm working really closely with my Vice President, Julia Pham, and the Communications Director, Brittany Pham, to sort of create more of a transparent outlook on what the association actually is. So I mentioned before, the Associated Students of the University of Washington represents 45,000 students, but how many of those students actually know what the ASUW is? I can say that, as the ASUW president, it's not great for me to say, but not a lot of students might know what students or what the association actually does or what it's comprised of. And so that's something that I think is really important to look at. You mentioned the ASUW Wiki, sort of fixing that and going back to the website, seeing how students can find out information about what the association is before finding out what we do, because if they don't even know what ASUW is, what it stands for, what we're all about, then that's sort of invalidating the point that we're trying to push forward in that we're trying to support all students. And so I think that's a really important part of what our focus is looking forward these next 2 months, but also throughout the entire school year. So we're going to be doing a lot of work social media wise, in terms of our website, in terms of how we're outreaching to students in different student organizations. So there's over 1,000 RSOs now, and a lot of them congregate at the RSO Fair, maybe doing some sort of workshops where these RSOs can sort of attend and have more information on what the association does, what resources we have to support them, but specifically the students in the RSOs, and seeing how we can advocate for a wider range of the student body. Because right now, like you mentioned, there's not a lot of knowledge of what ASUW is, and that's my main focus for next year. Anyone can come to the ASUW Board of Directors meetings and find out what we're discussing, but these are issues that the 8 elected officials and the ex officio members are discussing, and sort of that's how we advocate for student needs, student opinions, is through that governing body. And so once those, things are approved, pieces of legislation are approved, that's my responsibility to take to administrators and legislators and advocate for, as ASUW president, what has been voted on by the board of directors for the student body. And these are issues that might be small, might be large. For example, the board of directors through the Student Senate sort of advocated for decreasing tuition a few years back, and so that's something that impacted all students on campus, but it went through the ASUW Senate and then the Board of Directors, and so that's how we sort of advocate for student needs through the Board of Directors, which I sit on, and then the ASUW Senate is a governing body that is sort of the other branch of the ASUW decision making, and so what they do is any student can join if they have 15 constituents that they have behind them or supporting them, and you become a senator. You can vote on legislation that students propose. This could include anything from adding a new microwave in the hub to advocating for tuition decrease. So a long range of what students can actually advocate for. And this is student opinion pushed through the Student Senate. So it's all students representing themselves basically in that governing body, which then goes to vote, and these things are then implemented as decisions that have been approved by the Student Senate.